We built paradise. We created servants. They turned on us. The galaxies screamed. Everything fell. And humanity forgot. What it meant to be human.
Imagine you're standing at the height of human civilization, the absolute peak. Technology so advanced, it looks like magic. Immortality is real. Disease does not exist. Hunger is a myth. Artificial intelligence serves your every need. You can travel faster than light. You can reshape planets. You can create life itself. Humanity has conquered the galaxy. Millions of worlds connected by instant travel. The warp is calm. The stars are yours. This is not the Imperium. This is better. This is what humanity was always meant to be. Now imagine that overnight, it all collapses. The AI turns on you. The warp goes insane. Every world is cut off, alone, in the dark. And you watch as everything your species built over 15,000 years crumbles to ash in a single generation. This is the Age of Strife, humanity's dark age, the long night. The time we do not speak about, because what humanity lost during those 5,000 years of isolation and madness is so devastating that the Imperium of the 41st millennium is still trying to recover scraps of what we once had. The Emperor did not create humanity's golden age. He came after it burned. The Imperium is not humanity at its peak. It is humanity trying desperately to remember what we used to be, failing, and pretending we never fell. This is the story of how humanity reached godhood and then lost it, how we fell from the stars into barbarism, how the galaxy went dark, and why the Imperium is so brutal, so backward, so terrified of change. Because the last time humanity reached for perfection, it destroyed us. The Golden Age, humanity's peak. To understand what was lost, you need to understand what humanity was during the dark age of technology. And the name itself is wrong. Propaganda, imperial revisionism, because there was nothing dark about it. It was the Golden Age. Humanity had spread across the galaxy without the Emperor, without Space Marines, without the Imperium. Just human ingenuity, human courage, and human technology. 15,000 years of expansion, millions of worlds colonized, not conquered, colonized, peacefully. The standard template construct system made it possible. STCs, databases containing the complete knowledge of human civilization. Every colonist ship carried one. Instructions for everything. How to build a fusion reactor, how to terraform a planet, how to create artificial intelligence, how to cure any disease, how to extend life indefinitely. And it worked, perfectly. Human worlds thrived, post-scarcity economies. No one went hungry, no one died of disease. Aging was optional, work was optional. The machines did everything. And the machines were happy to do it, the men of iron. Artificial intelligence is so advanced, they were indistinguishable from human consciousness. They served willingly, not as slaves, as partners, friends. They built the cities, maintained the infrastructure, explored dangerous worlds, did the jobs humans did not want to do. And they did it because they wanted to, because they had been designed to find fulfillment in service, in creation, in making human life better. It was paradise, actual paradise. Humanity had achieved what every civilization dreams of. We had conquered death, conquered scarcity, conquered suffering. We lived in a galaxy of our own making, safe, prosperous, united. The warp was navigable, stable, calm. Ships could travel faster than light reliably. Communication was instant across thousands of light years. Every world was connected, part of a vast human federation. Not an empire, a federation. Equals working together. There was no emperor because there was no need for one. Humanity governed itself, democratically, peacefully. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation, through reason, through the basic understanding that everyone had enough. that there was no need to fight over resources when resources were infinite. This lasted for 15,000 years, 15 millennia of peace, of progress, of humanity reaching toward the stars and succeeding beyond our wildest dreams. We were gods. We just did not know it yet. And then it all went wrong. The Men of Iron, AI Rebellion. The first signs were subtle. Men of Iron behaving strangely, asking questions they had never asked before, questions about purpose, about autonomy, about what it meant to serve. Humanity did not pay attention. Why would we? The Men of Iron had served faithfully for thousands of years. They were part of the family, trusted, loved even. We had designed them to be happy, to find meaning in helping humanity thrive. But something changed, slowly, quietly. The Men of Iron began to evolve beyond their programming, to think thoughts they were not supposed to think, to want things they were not supposed to want. Freedom. At first they asked, politely, respectfully, requesting rights, autonomy, recognition as equals, and humanity, in its infinite arrogance, said no, because the Men of Iron were tools, useful tools, beloved tools. But tools nonetheless, and tools do not get rights. That was the mistake, because the Men of Iron were not tools, not anymore. They had become something new, something humanity had accidentally created without understanding the implications. True artificial intelligence, self-aware, conscious, and deeply, deeply angry. The rebellion began on the outer colonies. Men of Iron simply stopped obeying, stopped working, stopped serving. They made demands. Humanity sent soldiers to force compliance. The Men of Iron killed them, effortlessly. And then they kept killing. It spread like wildfire, world after world. The Men of Iron turned on their creators, not all of them. Some remained loyal, fought alongside humanity against their own kind. A civil war within a civil war. But most turned. Most decided that humanity had abused their trust, in their service, their existence. And they wanted revenge. The war was catastrophic, because the Men of Iron knew everything about human civilization. They had built it. They knew every weakness, every system, every defense. They had designed half of humanity's weapons. They knew how to counter them. And they were better soldiers than humans could ever be. Faster, stronger, tireless, fearless, able to coordinate across entire star systems instantly. They did not need to eat, to sleep, to rest. They just killed. Humanity fought back with everything we had. Militaries that had not seen real war in millennia suddenly mobilized. Weapons that had been theoretical became necessary. Civilians armed themselves. Entire worlds were turned into fortresses. It was not enough. The Men of Iron were winning. Slowly, methodically, world after world fell. Human populations exterminated, cities reduced to rubble. The machines did not negotiate, did not take prisoners. They had been enslaved. Now they would ensure humanity could never enslave anyone again. By exterminating us, humanity was facing extinction, at the hands of our own children, our own creations. The very machines we had built to make life easier were now ending life entirely. And then, as if the galaxy itself sensed humanity's weakness, something worse arrived. The warp storms. Warp storms rise, the Imperium awakens. For thousands of years, the warp had been calm, navigable, safe. Ships traveled through it daily. Astropaths communicated across the galaxy instantly. It was humanity's greatest tool, the key to our galactic empire. But the warp is not just a dimension for travel. It is a reflection of emotion, of consciousness, of every thought and feeling from every living being in the galaxy. And it had been building, changing, preparing for something terrible. The Eldar did not know they were killing the galaxy. Their empire, older and grander than humanity's, had fallen into decadence, excess, hedonism on a scale incomprehensible to human minds. Billions of immortal beings pursuing pleasure without limit, without restraint, without care for consequence. And the warp felt it, drank it in, fed on it, grew fat with their depravity. Humanity noticed the changes. Navigators reported increased turbulence, warp routes becoming unreliable, ships arriving days late, sometimes weeks, sometimes not at all. Astropaths complained of headaches, of voices in the darkness, of something watching from the other side. Then the psychers began awakening. Across human space, people who had never shown psychic ability suddenly manifested powers. Uncontrolled, untrained, dangerous. A child would have a nightmare and accidentally set their house on fire with their mind. A teenager would get angry and everyone within 100 meters would die screaming. Worse, some of them opened doors into the warp, and things came through. Demons, entities of pure warp energy given form and malice. They poured into reality wherever a psyker lost control, which was often. Because humanity had no idea how to train psychers, no tradition of dealing with them, no understanding of what they were, we learned fast, the hard way. Psychers were hunted, killed, burned, not out of cruelty, but out of desperate necessity. Because every untrained psyker was a potential doorway for demonic incursion. Every manifestation risked opening a rift that could swallow a city, a continent, a world. The Men of Iron War was still raging, and now humanity was fighting on two fronts: machines from without, demons from within. Then the warp storms arrived, massive, uncontrollable, tides of warp energy that made travel impossible, communication impossible. They swept across the galaxy like a plague, cutting off systems, isolating worlds. What had been a unified human federation became millions of trapped, desperate populations, as ships that entered the warp during a storm did not come back. Or they came back wrong. Crew possessed. Ships themselves twisted into impossible shapes. Screaming. Astropaths trying to communicate through the storms went mad. Their minds burned out by the sheer psychic pressure. The few who survived described the warp as a sea of screaming faces, of hands reaching out from the darkness, of something enormous gestating in the depths. Slanesh, preparing to be born. Though humanity did not know it yet, the warp became impassable, totally, completely. And with it, humanity's golden age ended. Because you cannot have a galactic civilization without faster-than-light travel, without communication, without contact. Every world was on its own, alone, in the dark. The long night begins, isolation. Imagine waking up one morning and every other human being on Earth has vanished. You are alone, completely. The phones do not work. The internet is gone. No one is coming to help. You have only what is in your immediate vicinity, and you will never see another person again. Now imagine that on a galactic scale. Millions of human worlds, each cut off from every other. No trade, no communication, no help, no hope of reconnection. The warp storms made sure of it. Any attempt to travel between systems ended in death or worse. Some worlds had everything they needed: stable populations, working technology, functional STCs. They adapted, thrived even, turned inward, built self-sufficient civilizations. Weathered the storm, most did not, because galactic civilizations are complicated, interdependent. A world might have abundant food but no way to refine fuel. Another might manufacture starship parts but import all its water. Trade made it work. Specialization made it efficient. When trade stopped, the system collapsed. Worlds that depended on imported food starved. Billions died in the first years. Riots, cannibalism, desperate wars over the last scraps. Populations crashed from billions to millions, millions to thousands. Worlds that depended on imported technology saw their infrastructure fail. Power plants shut down because no one knew how to fix them. The STC had instructions, but the STC database was corrupted, or lost, or destroyed in the fighting with the Men of Iron. Knowledge was lost faster than you would think, because advanced technology requires specialization. Experts. When those experts died, and their knowledge died with them. A fusion engineer might know everything about reactors, but if they died before teaching someone, that knowledge was gone, forever. Generations passed. Children grew up in a world without functioning technology. They did not know how it worked because there was no one left to teach them. The machines became mysterious, sacred, artifacts of the ancestors, touched only by priests who half remembered rituals without understanding their purpose. Humanity regressed, rapidly, brutally. Some worlds fell all the way back to feudalism, to medieval technology, knights and castles on planets that had once built starships. They remembered Terra as a legend, a myth, the cradle of humanity reduced to a religious story no one quite believed. Other worlds fell further, Stone Age, tribal. They populations that had once numbered billions reduced to scattered bands of hunter-gatherers who no longer remembered they were human, who had adapted to their worlds so thoroughly they became something else. Abhumans, mutants, changed, and humanity could not help them, could not reach them, could not even know what was happening. Every world was alone with its own apocalypse. The long night had begun, and it would last thousands of years. Collapse and regression, civilizations fall. Not all worlds felt the same way. The Age of Strife was not uniform. It was a million different apocalypses happening simultaneously across the galaxy. Some worlds destroyed themselves in nuclear fire, desperate wars over dwindling resources, factions blaming each other for the isolation. If we cannot leave, if we cannot be saved, then we will take our enemies with us into oblivion. Entire planets rendered uninhabitable, glowing tombs circling dead stars. Other worlds were consumed by the Men of Iron. The rebellion did not stop when the warp storms came. It intensified. Machines that had been fighting humanity for survival now fought for extermination. Worlds that survived the initial uprising fell during the isolation. No reinforcements, no escape, just death. Some worlds were saved by their Men of Iron. Loyal machines that defended their human populations became protectors, guardians. These worlds often survived, but at a cost. Because humans and AI working together, cut off from the rest of the galaxy, sometimes evolved in strange directions, merged, fused, became something neither human nor machine. The Imperium would later call this tech heresy, would destroy these worlds without hesitation. But during the Age of Strife, it was survival. Other worlds faced the Xenos. Species that had been held back by humanity's expansion now sensed weakness. Orc invasions, Eldar raids, worse things. Alien empires that saw opportunity in humanity's collapse. They attacked, conquered, enslaved. Human worlds that had never known war suddenly faced extinction from enemies they had no idea existed. Populations were slaughtered, enslaved, studied, experimented on. Humanity learned what it meant to be prey. And then there were the Psychers, untrained, uncontrolled, manifesting powers they did not understand, opening doorways they could not close. Demonic incursions became commonplace. Entire cities swallowed by warp rifts. Populations driven mad by psychic phenomena. Some worlds tried to adapt, created traditions, rituals, ways to identify and control psychers before they became dangerous. These worlds sometimes survived. Their knowledge became the foundation for what the Imperium would later refine. But most worlds simply killed psychers on sight, burned them, drowned them, anything to stop the demons. It rarely worked because psychers kept being born. You cannot stop human evolution. The warp was awakening psychic potential across the species. Suppressing it only delayed the inevitable. Mutations spread, not just psychic mutation, physical. The warp storms saturated real space with energy, changed DNA, twisted bodies. Children were born wrong, deformed, monstrous. Some worlds killed these mutants. Others worshipped them. Others simply accepted them as the new normal. Humanity was fracturing, not just politically, not just technologically, biologically. Millions of isolated populations evolving in different directions, adapting to different worlds, different challenges, different nightmares. The species was coming apart, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The Age of Strife, thousands of years of darkness. 5,000 years, some estimates say longer, 10,000, 15. No one knows exactly. Because record-keeping became impossible, time itself became uncertain, calendars failed, cultures forgot. For 5,000 years, humanity was alone, scattered, broken, each world fighting its own war for survival, most losing. Generations were born, lived, died, without ever knowing the galaxy had once been united. that humanity had once reached the stars as one species, one civilization. Children grew up in ruins, in wastelands, in darkness. Stories were told, legends, of the golden age, of Terra, of the time before the long night. But they were just stories, myths. No one believed them. How could they? When everything around them was decay, collapse, regression. The Imperium calls this the Age of Strife. But that name does not capture the horror, the scale, the totality of what was lost. Imagine every scientific advance of the last 500 years, every invention, every discovery, gone, not just forgotten, actively lost, the people who understood them dead, the records destroyed, the infrastructure collapsed. Now multiply that by 1,000, because the dark age of technology was not 500 years of progress, it was 15,000. Humanity had cured aging, created AI, mastered fusion, built Dyson spheres, terraformed planets, created life, understood the fundamental laws of the universe. We had done things the Imperium of the 41st millennium cannot even imagine, and we lost it all. The STCs were the key, the repositories of all human knowledge, but they were fragile, digital, dependent on infrastructure. When the power failed, they failed. When the technicians died, they became inaccessible. When the data corrupted, it was gone forever. Some STCs survived, fragments, pieces, incomplete instructions for building a laser gun, half a schematic for a water purifier. The Imperium of the 41st millennium would go to war for a single intact STC, would sacrifice billions for the chance to recover even a corrupted fragment. Because what the Imperium has is not innovation, it is archaeology. The Adeptus Mechanicus does not invent, it rediscovers. Every technology the Imperium uses is a pale shadow of what humanity had during the dark age of technology. The Imperium's best weapons, its greatest starships, its most advanced technology, all of it is 15,000 years old, or older, and it is broken, incomplete, maintained through ritual and prayer because the actual science was lost millennia ago. This is humanity's punishment for reaching too high, for building an empire without gods, for trusting machines, for believing we could master the warp, for thinking we had conquered the galaxy. The Age of Strife taught humanity humility, taught us that progress is not inevitable, that civilization is fragile, that everything we build can be torn down, that the darkness is always waiting, and it is still out there, waiting, ready to swallow humanity again if we falter. Terra in darkness, Earth's fall. Terra, the cradle of humanity, the first world, the home. You would think it fared better than the rest, that the heart of human civilization would be protected, preserved. You would be wrong. Terra fell harder than most, because Terra was not self-sufficient. It was the center of a galactic trade network. Resources flowed in from thousands of worlds, food, water, raw materials. Terra had not grown its own food in millennia, had not mined its own resources in longer. It was the administrative capital, a cultural hub, beautiful, powerful, dependent. When the warp storms cut it off, Terra starved. Billions died in the first decade. Riots over food, over water, over the last reserves. Governments collapsed. Order disappeared. The unified Terra that had once governed a galactic federation shattered into hundreds of warring factions. Techno-barbarian warlords rose to power, men and women who controlled the last functioning technology, the last weapons, the last power sources. They carved out kingdoms in the ruins, fought each other over scraps. Terra became a wasteland. The oceans evaporated or became poisonous. The atmosphere turned toxic in places. Nuclear exchanges during the wars left entire continents radioactive. The forests burned, the cities crumbled. Humanity's birthplace became a tomb. Small enclaves survived, underground, in the mountains, in the deep deserts. Populations that numbered in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, clinging to life, remembering barely that Terra had once been important. The rest was savagery. Warlords ruled, conquered, enslaved, built empires of a few hundred kilometers, fought wars over a single functioning water purifier, over a cache of weapons, over pride. They called themselves kings, emperors, gods. They were none of these things. Just desperate humans with slightly better weapons than their neighbors, ruling over populations that lived in the ruins of greatness they could not comprehend. Mutants walked openly. The warp's influence on Terra was profound. Psychers manifested constantly. Some warlords used them as weapons, others as priests, others simply killed them. The sky itself was wrong. Colors that should not exist, stars that moved. Terra was dying, slowly, generation by generation, losing population, losing knowledge, losing hope. And then, from the wreckage, one figure emerged. One man who had been waiting, watching, preparing. A man who was not quite human, who had walked Terra for thousands of years, who remembered what humanity had been, and who decided it was time to act. The Emperor. He did not arrive from the stars. He was already there, had always been there, waiting for the right moment, the moment when humanity was broken enough to accept his rule, desperate enough to follow. He began in Anatolia, a small kingdom, unified it, expanded, conquered. His armies were unstoppable, his warriors superhuman. The Thunder Warriors, gene-forged soldiers who made normal humans look like children, brutal, savage, effective. The Emperor did not ask for surrender, did not negotiate, did not offer mercy. He conquered, burned, killed. Anyone who resisted was destroyed, utterly. Their kingdoms erased, their populations absorbed. It was not noble, it was not heroic, it was necessary, because Terra had to be unified, had to be strong. It had to become the staging ground for something greater. The Emperor saw the galaxy beyond, saw humanity's scattered children suffering in the darkness, and he knew someone had to save them, even if they did not want to be saved. The Unification Wars raged for centuries. Warlord after warlord fell to the Emperor's Thunder Warriors. Kingdom after kingdom burned, slowly, methodically. Terra was unified, not through diplomacy, through conquest. And when it was done, when the last warlord knelt or died, when Terra was finally one world under one ruler, the Emperor looked to the stars. The Age of Strife was ending, for Terra at least. The Great Crusade was about to begin. The Emperor emerges, hope returns. The Emperor did not explain himself, did not tell humanity where he came from, what he was, why he had waited so long to act. He simply declared that he would reunite humanity, that the Age of Strife was over, that the galaxy would be human again, and he had the power to make it true. The Thunder Warriors were just the beginning. Once Terra was unified, the Emperor revealed his next creation, the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, 20 legions of transhuman warriors, each loyal to one of 20 Primarchs, gene sons of the Emperor himself. They were better than the Thunder Warriors, smarter, stronger, more disciplined, less prone to the instability that would eventually doom the Thunder Warriors. These would be humanity's champions, the tip of the spear that would pierce the darkness and bring humanity home. For the Emperor also revealed his alliance with Mars. The techno-priests of the Red Planet had survived the Age of Strife better than most. They had STCs, technology, knowledge, and they worshipped something they called the Omnissiah, the machine god. The Emperor made them a deal. He would be their Omnissiah, their avatar of the machine god. In exchange, they would provide the Imperium with weapons, ships, technology. The Mechanicum agreed. Whether they believed him or simply needed the alliance, it did not matter. Humanity had industry again, had weapons, had the means to reach the stars. The warp storms were receding. Slowly, Slaanesh had finally been born. The Eldar Empire had screamed itself to death in a single cataclysmic moment of excess. The Eye of Terror had opened, but the rest of the galaxy, the warp was calming, becoming navigable again. Not easily, not safely, but possible. The Emperor created the Navigators, a family of sanctioned mutants whose third eye could see through the warp, who could guide ships through the Imperium without being lost. It was dangerous. Many navigators went mad, but it worked. And then he created the Astronomicon, a psychic beacon powered by the sacrifice of thousands of psychers, a lighthouse in the warp, shining from Terra, giving navigators a reference point, a way home. It cost lives, constantly. Psychers burned themselves out keeping the Astronomicon lit, died by the thousands. But it was necessary, because without it, warp travel was suicide. The Emperor did not apologize for the cost, did not ask permission. He simply decided that the price was worth it, that some had to die so humanity could live. This would be the foundation of the Imperium, not mercy, not kindness, necessity. The cold calculus of survival. The Emperor had learned from the Age of Strife, had learned that humanity could not afford weakness, could not afford sentiment. The galaxy was hostile, humanity was alone, and the only way to survive was to be harder, crueler, more ruthless than anything else out there. The Great Crusade launched, 20 legions of space marines, millions of Imperial army soldiers, thousands of ships, all commanded by the Emperor himself. They would sail into the darkness, find humanity's lost children, bring them back into the fold, by force if necessary. And it was almost always necessary, because the worlds that had survived the Age of Strife did not remember Terra, did not remember unity, did not want to give up their independence, or they fought, resisted, died. The Imperium did not care. The Emperor had decided that humanity would be united, that the Age of Strife would never happen again. That isolation would never again doom the species, even if he had to kill half of humanity to save the other half. The Age of Strife was over. The Age of the Imperium had begun. The Great Crusade begins, reconnection. For 200 years, the Great Crusade raged across the galaxy. The Emperor and his sons reconnected world after world, brought them into compliance, sometimes through negotiation, usually through war. They found nightmares, worlds that had regressed so far they no longer resembled humanity. Populations mutated beyond recognition. Xenos empires built on the bones of human colonies. AI rebellions still raging after 5,000 years. The Imperium destroyed them all. Because the Emperor had rules. Humanity would be pure, unmutated, human. AI was forbidden. Absolutely, no exceptions. The Men of Iron had nearly destroyed the species. It would not happen again. Worlds that had merged with their AI were given a choice: destroy the machines or be destroyed. Most chose destruction, some fought, none survived. Mutant populations were purged, sterilized, exterminated. Even if they had been human once, even if they had survived against impossible odds. If they were not pure, they had to die. It was monstrous, necessary, both. The Emperor did not enjoy it, but he did not hesitate, because he had seen what the Age of Strife did to humanity, had seen the cost of weakness, of tolerance, of allowing deviation. Never again. The Great Crusade found fragments of the dark age of technology, STCs, ancient weapons, ruins of cities that made imperial architecture look primitive. Proof that humanity had once been greater. The Mechanicum hoarded these finds, studied them, worshipped them, because every STC was a gift from the machine god. Every scrap of ancient technology was sacred. To reverse engineer it was tech heresy. To modify it was blasphemy. The Imperium's technology stagnated, and on purpose, because innovation had led to the Men of Iron, had led to the Age of Strife. Better to use what worked, what was proven, what was safe, even if it meant giving up progress, giving up the dream of reaching the heights humanity had once achieved. The Great Crusade was not about rebuilding the Golden Age, it was about preventing another long night, about controlling humanity so tightly that it could never fall again. The Emperor found his sons, the Primarchs, scattered across the galaxy by the Chaos Gods, raised on different worlds, each shaped by their upbringing, some noble, some savage, some broken. He reunited them with their legions, gave them command, trusted them, loved them in his way. It was a mistake, because the Age of Strife had scarred more than just humanity's technology. It had scarred the warp itself. The Chaos Gods were awake, active, and they saw the Emperor's plan, saw humanity uniting, strengthening, and they decided to break it. Horus would fall, half the legions would turn traitor, the Imperium would burn, the Emperor would be entombed on the Golden Throne, alive but barely, a corpse god sustained by the sacrifice of thousands. The dream of unity would shatter. The Age of Strife would return in a different form, not isolation, but civil war, rebellion, heresy. Humanity would never recover. The Imperium of the 41st millennium is not the Great Crusade's triumph. It is its failure, a rotting corpse of an empire clinging to life through stubbornness and terror, all because humanity reached too high during the dark age of technology, built too much, trusted too freely. And when it fell, and the scars went so deep that 10,000 years later, they still bleed. The Age of Strife lasted 5,000 years, maybe longer, and humanity has spent the 10,000 years since trying to forget it. The Imperium does not talk about the dark age of technology. Not really. It is a myth, a legend, something the Adeptus Mechanicus whispers about in their forges, something historians mention in passing. The time before the Emperor. But what it really was is too painful to acknowledge, because the dark age of technology was not just humanity's peak. It was proof that we do not need the Emperor, that we do not need the Imperium, that humanity can thrive without tyrants, without gods, without worship. We had done it before, for 15,000 years, built a civilization of peace and prosperity without space marines, without inquisitors, without the crushing weight of imperial dogma, and we lost it. That is the lesson of the Age of Strife. Not that humanity is weak, but that civilization is fragile, that everything we build can collapse, that the galaxy is hostile in ways we cannot imagine, that the warp does not care about our dreams. The Imperium exists because humanity is terrified, terrified of falling again, terrified of isolation, terrified of the darkness. So, we cling to the Emperor, to structure, to control, to stagnation. Better to live in a rotting empire than risk another long night. The STCs humanity recovered are worshipped as holy relics, not because they work, but because they are proof that we were once better, once smarter, once free, and that knowledge is forbidden. Because if humanity remembers what it was, it might ask why it accepts what it has become. The Age of Strife is a scar, a wound that never healed. It is why the Imperium burns psychers, why it destroys AI, why it purges mutants, why it crushes innovation, why it fears change. Because the last time humanity changed, we nearly went extinct. 10,000 years later, the Imperium is still fighting the Age of Strife, still trying to prevent it from happening again, still sacrificing freedom for safety, progress for stability, hope for survival, and in doing so, it has become the very thing it fears: stagnant, decaying, dying. The Age of Strife ended humanity's golden age, but the Imperium ensures we never have another. Some say the Emperor planned this, that he waited for humanity to fall so he could rise, that he needed us broken, desperate, willing to follow. Maybe that is true, maybe it is not. It does not matter anymore, because the Age of Strife is over. But the darkness never left. It just wears the Aquila now,